Well, we've been having folks lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance ever since I've been chair, but I have to tell you that was probably one of the best ones we've had. Okay, agenda item number 2 is the announcement of the September 2019 School Attendance Award, and Superintendent Todd Finn will present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lewiston Public Schools recognizes that attendance matters in our schools. It is important that we recognize those learning communities where parents, teachers, staff, and students come together to make school a great place to spend all day. Each month of the school year, we will evaluate the attendance rate of each of our schools and give special recognition to the school community that has the highest attendance rate. This month, the third highest attendance percentage was McMahon Elementary School at 96.4%. That's third. The runner-up, second place, is Farwell Elementary at 96.8% attendance for the entire month. And the school with the highest attendance percentage for the month of September is Geiger Elementary School, which came in at 97.3%. Those kids go to school. So with that said, we are going to present Geiger Elementary School with the traveling banner, which will be proudly displayed in their school for the month of October. And at this time, we'd like to present Principal Cindy Gish, and with some help from her kiddos, with the banner for the month, and get a picture with the principal, the board chair, and I might even make an appearance in that picture too. So I'll get the banner. Let's meet up front. Someone else named it, or you might be able to keep it. So because of that, that's Velcro right there. I think the guy says, oh, let's glue it on that, because we're going to do it every month, so we'll see. So this is our banner. Congratulations. So one thing to keep in mind also with this is that what gets rewarded gets done, let's face it. And we have to start recognizing the small victories along the way. And when kids show up to school, that's the very first thing that we should be looking for. I'm so proud to say that even the school that had the lowest attendance rate was still at 90%. And if you compare that to where folks were a year ago, 2 years ago, if we can stay right there, we're going to do some things. So very, very proud of the entire district. So once again, thank you so much.
Okay, agenda item number 3 is to receive a presentation by Geiger Elementary 5th grade math class. Teacher Mrs. Fahey and the students will present.
So before these awesome kids get started, just for some background, this Geiger Elementary School not only has the formula for high attendance, thanks for that segue, but they also have some amazing things happening within their classrooms. Last week, I received a special invitation by one of the learners in Miss Fahey's classroom, and I was invited to do math with some fifth graders. And I was kind of intimidated because I've not done math with fifth graders in a long time. Right, Ava? I was so impressed that I asked them to come join us tonight so that the public could hear about the great things that they're doing in math class.
Good evening. We come to you tonight from Miss Fahey's 5th grade from Geiger Elementary School. My name is Ismail Mohammed, and I'm going to introduce you to my classmates. We have a short presentation for you with some math problems Bailey will present.
And it'll stay on. See the red light?
Oh.
You did introduce us, Ishmael.
You guys introduce yourself.
What? Huh? What's your name? Oh, hi, I'm Lily Douglas.
I'm Ava Martin.
Hi, my name is Mila.
Hello, my name is Ismail Mohammed.
Hi, my name is Lily Douglas. Hello, my name is Ava. Hello, my name is Mila.
Hi, my name is Bailey.
Okay, so we'll give you a few minutes to work on those problems first, and then we'll get started. Equation to solve this problem. Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything you can think of, do it.
All right, so class, so refresh my memory. So the first thing we have to do is we have to find out what information we do have, right? Did I learn that from you? All right, so the information we have here is that Mrs. Peon's salary is $42,000, and she gets a $2,000 raise. Who negotiated that contract? Every year. Mr. Peon's annual salary is $37,000, and he increases $3,000 per year. So the question is, in how many years will Mr. and Mrs. Peon make the same salary? Oh, you have it done for us.
Yes.
Okay.
We were just giving you a few minutes to look at them first, and then we'll explain to you the method that we used.
So we made a graph, and so then we did Mrs. Peon's section, and then Mr. Peon's, and then the years that it took. So we doubled it each year. So then this is year 1, and this is 2, 3, and it took 5 years and to make the same salary, which was $52,000.
So what we used was something that's called the upside down method. So Mila, you want to tell us about the upside down method?
Sure. This format is similar to a method we have been using in our math class. It's called the upside down teaching model. It's called this because it's kind of the opposite of the traditional teaching method where the teacher presents the strategy first and gives us the problem to solve.
In upside down teaching, the teacher gives us the problem first and allows us to use our own strategies to solve them. Then we share our strategies with each other so that we can compare our strategies and the thinking that we use to solve the problems.
So this was the first problem that you had that Ava solved. Ava ultimately ended up making a table to solve that problem. Then Lily had the second problem.
So we knew that so what I did for solve this problem was pretty much multiply every number we had by 2. So we knew that in month 1 we started with 20. So 20 times 2 is 40. 40 times 2 is 80, and 80 times 2 is 160, so on and on, until finally in month 6 we have $1,280. So the answer ultimately is 6 months. Then this is a much more organized format of that.
So Lily kind of illustrated
Yeah.
a couple of different strategies that she used to solve the problem. So she showed you her work for figuring out how much was saved each month, and then she showed you her work for adding it all up to figure out what month Kendall would have enough money.
So they're really similar methods, but what we liked about this method is that it gives us an opportunity to try our own strategies first, and allows us to process the information in our own way. It really helps us to be more aware of our own thinking.
We thank you for for giving us your time and letting us be here.
Yes, but we have to say
I'm not the person who's supposed to say this. Okay. Thank you for letting our future shine. We're gonna give you some Geiger shades.
Yay!
Shine!
Protect your eyes from the sun. Ishmael, stop bragging. Wait, one person doesn't have them.
Wait, we got.
Oh, she didn't get.
I don't. What? Hold on. Who doesn't have their button here?
Me, I don't have mine.
Oh, whatever. Bye, everybody.
Okay, folks, we'll move to agenda item number 4, which is the consent agenda. Are there any items that members want to remove from the consent agenda? Mr. Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The personnel agenda.
Ms. Parks?
If I have a couple questions on the field trip, okay, then I would request that, please.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just noticed that a name was actually marked for a transfer end hiring, so I just wanted to clear that up.
These questions may not be able to be answered tonight if the people aren't here, I guess. On the Acadia National Park field trip, you want the specific question? Do you want me to say it all right now? Okay. It says there'll be water activities, and then in one area it says that there's going to be a main guide attending, that Mr. Hutchinson is a main guide. Do we know if he will be with the students at all times while they're doing the water activities, or, because it's a lot of different activities.
And Ms. Parks, I'll find out those details for you, absolutely.
And then on the Boston Museum trip, at various parts, it says that there'll be 4 chaperones, and then in other areas it says there will be 5 chaperones. I was just wondering which one was the accurate.
And is there any, so are you comfortable with this passing? Okay. Okay. So with those suggestions, if there's no other concerns, the consent agenda will be adopted. Agenda item number 5 is public input. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the school committee? Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 6 is a report from our student representatives.
All right, I guess I'll start. Good evening, everyone. So I have a couple things to report tonight. Tomorrow is the first FAFSA night at LHS from 4 to 7, where seniors are able to complete their FAFSA with the aid of counselors and staff. Secondly, the AVAC Contemporary Affairs is having their first meeting at Bates College this Wednesday and discussing issues surrounding global climate change. And lastly, on a side note, I want to give a thanks to Jamie and Lizzie over at the store next door on shining light on their new project they're doing onto the homeless youth of Maine and how we can help as a community of Lewiston. And whether it's through donation of clothes, food, or even spreading the word through social media, everything helps. And I'm very excited to see how this program will grow and how it will impact our community. Thank you.
So, as you know, this past week was Spirit Week, and we had a lot of good participation. It was a lot of fun this year. There was a lot of cheering in the crowd during the whole assembly at the gym, and also at the games after school, there were a lot of students going there and cheering our athletic teams on. Also, I've been talking to a few of my fellow classmates, and a lot of them have been going on the college trips through our school, which is a great opportunity for you to go and see different colleges and what they have to offer. And they also say how much they're looking forward to the expansion if we get the vote of yes.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from committee members? Ms. Roy.
I want to say the Aspirations Lab has done an amazing job getting the word out about the FAFSA nights. There's 2 nights, and isn't there some sort of scholarship?
Yeah, correct. So if you finish your FAFSA within that period, you get a $500 scholarship. And FAFSA nights are tomorrow and next Tuesday as well.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Thank you. Agenda item number 7 is to receive a presentation regarding the Store Next Door program at Lewiston High School. Jamie Coet will be presenting, but Superintendent Finn would like to start this off.
The Store Next Door is a grassroots effort to provide homeless teens what they need most. In Lewiston, we do have teens who do not have a place to call home, yet they still make it to school. They still want to learn, and they still hope to become a part of some community where they can rise above their circumstances. Sometimes what they need is a coat, and other times it may be food. Most of the time, however, it's love that these kids need more than anything. I have spent time with these kids and their amazing mentor. The story is gaining national interest as Lizzie Snyder has captured who they are and what they are all about in a 4-part mini documentary that many folks have seen. Through frequent engagements with Jamie, we are exploring innovative ways to improve what they do at Lewiston High School and perhaps one day expand what they are doing to other schools in our district. I know for a fact that the school committee supports the efforts of the folks at the store next door. Principal Langlis, the kids who have such a tough path to travel to get to graduation, have a vision to make that happen. Without you, we could not have come this far. And it will only be with this school committee's huge hearts, problem-solving minds, and love for our children that we will one day take the store next door to the next level. It's important for all to know that our school committee has been supportive of the efforts of our school communities, and they've been very supportive of all the work that's been done at the store next door. I'm confident that this committee will be open and receptive to new ideas and are excited about maximizing the potential of this fantastic program. At this time, I'd like to invite Jamie up to let the school committee and the public know how things are going with the store next door and where she would like to see the program go from here. Jamie?
Lordy. Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie Cowett. School board members, hello. I know some of you from before. I just wanted to talk a little bit about our program. The program has been at Lewiston High School for 20 years. I have been there for 10 of those years. Our main goal is to eliminate barriers to education for children. So anybody in the Lewiston area that is experiencing homelessness, that are Lewiston students, and they also might be outplaced to Franklin, Poland Spring Academy. We try to meet their needs so they can continue with school, and our main goal is to get them to graduation. We serve up to 300 kids in a school year. I know that last year alone, right before school ended and summer began, there was 46 families identified as homeless just at Montello alone. So our numbers are constantly growing. The kids come downstairs, and I would love for all of you to come see the store next door if any of you can ever get over to the high school. We have a kitchen table, and the kitchen table is very big for me and our kids at the school. Some of these kids have never experienced a kitchen table and having meals or just conversations that you would have with a parent. It is a great teaching tool to the students, and we downstairs meet the student exactly where they are, and we just want to make sure that they are supported and feel that their high school family supports them and will do anything they can to get them to graduation. This is Katie. She's our academic liaison in the program, so her role there is to support kids with academic needs. A lot of our kids that we meet do not have internet or access to internet, so Katie will step in and we'll figure out ways to get their schoolwork done. Did Lizzie send you? Okay. Do I press this off?
She's here to answer them now.
Any questions from committee members? Ms. Roy?
Thank you for all of your work, everybody involved.
Thank you.
What is your biggest, what if you could have an ask from the school committee? I know you said support, but maybe a little more specific. And then before I forget, how do I get one of those T-shirts?
I have to make more. I guess my biggest thing is this need is increasing, and I know we came before the board and asked for emergency funding for the ed tech position at one point before Mr. Webster left. I think that the need is growing. There's more kids I'm meeting. When I'm out in the community, I meet even more kids that they do want to come to school, and they come to school for that relationship and then to continue on. So what I see the future of the store next door is a position. I would love a position and to bring this into all the schools so all children get supports and the things that they need. I know schools are already parenting children and feeding children, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I would love to be that person or create a team or something, work with admin, do something that we can have this in every school, because I feel like we're missing a lot of kids and there's a lot of needs that are not being addressed. And if we can do that, then I want to do that. So I would really love for you guys to come down and actually interact with the kids or just see the program. I think it's one thing to see these videos but like to actually be in the room. It's my office plus a clothing closet plus the food pantry plus the kitchen table where kids come and meet. So anything, it just turns into anything that a student needs at that time. I would really like you guys to come in and see it. I'm there 9 to sometimes 7:30. Sorry, Jake. I can give you my information. Email me. Yeah, I have it all in the packets I passed out. So, yeah, you're welcome.
Mr. Jensen?
Just two questions. One, do you get a lot of donations? And also, how soon do you envision expanding to other district schools?
Tomorrow, I'd like it to start tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding. So the store next door is 100% run by community donations. So donations come in from the community for me doing speaking engagements. On Saturdays and Sundays, I go to different churches. I go out in the community. I've done the Rotary Club, just anywhere where I can spread the word. I definitely want it out there and want the community to know that we're Lewiston strong and we're going to help our kids. I feel that this is the best practice model. I've been to the national conference twice and our program was recognized and talked about. So I'd like to continue this, and I would like to see where you guys can all help us and make this really a program for Lewiston school departments.
Ms. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi.
Thanks for having me visit just for a moment earlier
Yeah.
today. I
Yeah,
hope
thank
to come
you.
by for a longer period of time at some point, but I had a class to get to. So I'm just curious, the packet you handed out also has a business card for Health Affiliates Maine. What is that connection or relationship?
So 10 years ago, I was the ed tech in the program for the McKinney-Vento. My background is social work, and I saw that these kids were missing a lot of mental health and social needs. I approached the school and Health Affiliates, who I was working for, and they came up with an MOU through Lewiston Schools. So Health Affiliate is the agency that pays me to do case management with the students, and Lewiston High School houses me to be there. So I have a contract with the school and Health Affiliates.
That's really cool, and a history I didn't know before now, so thank you for illuminating that.
Yeah.
And then there's also an ed tech who's dedicated to the McKinney-Vento.
Yes, and that's Katie.
Great. And Lizzie is...
Lizzie is...
Hi, Lizzie.
This is Lizzie. So I knew Lizzie from high school, and we've been family friends for a long time. She didn't even really know what was going on, and she started doing YouTube videos, and I talked to her and introduced her, and then it's just all kind of come together from there.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for giving us even more to work with and think about and hopefully help you with in the
Thank
future.
you.
Mr. Shannon?
It appeared from the video, although it was short,
Yeah.
that you have a real problem with space.
Yes, I do.
Well, we are going to have a vote on November 5th about building another wing on our high school.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the plans talked about you getting that space, but the people who will get that space, and I say that because I have faith in this community, are going to vacate some other space.
Yes, that I would love to take over.
And all I can say is that your program serves our most needy,
Yeah.
and it serves them at no additional cost to this school department. And I see that as something this board, the next board that sits here in this room, can get behind and really help these kids. We are going to talk later tonight about a resolution that's coming up at our fall Congress. And it talks about having student input into the legislation that's going to impact them and affect them as we go forward. And I think this is an issue which we definitely need student input
Yes.
into. Homelessness is not something you blame people for.
Right.
It happens.
Right.
And damn, we need to help these kids
Thank you. Yes.
complete their
absolutely.
education in the best possible way. So I think that when you get up to heaven and they say, okay, what did you do? You're getting 2 years credit for each year you're putting in
Thank you
here.
very much. I did want to say that area that you're talking about downstairs is they have a washer and dryer hookup, and we also do laundry a lot of the times. Right, so that is our only shower also. So we have kids sometimes waiting outside at 6:30, even earlier in the morning, to come in and use that as their only shower that they can get to. So it's very needed. I would seek resources wherever I can. I've already contacted Whirlpool to see if I do get a space, if I can get a washer and dryer. So yeah, space is much needed. Thank you very much.
Any other question or comments from the committee? So just for the record, I'm not sure Mr. Shannon has the authority to grant extra years,
Yeah.
but it was.
I'll work with it. I'm fine.
Yeah, I know.
I'll take it.
All right, good point. So when you, so I understand, I toured it, but I'm not sure if you were there. It was back when Mary was around.
Yeah,
and
I was with Mary.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was just amazed at the work that you folks do. So clearly the
Thank
store
you.
next door provides like imminent needs like bathroom toiletries, clothing, food, etc. But when you have a student in imminent crisis with no home, no bed or no couch to surf onto, what are the steps that you take to ensure their safety? Is there foster homes or?
So we have one youth shelter here in Lewiston, which is New Beginnings. The problem, I guess you would say with that, is you need a parent's signature to get you into New Beginnings. So if you don't know where your parent is, or you haven't heard from them, or no one can get a hold of them, your next option is Portland. So I've paid for cab vouchers out to Portland with money that I get in from the store next door. I feel like my job doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. If I get a phone call Friday that a student has no place to go, I cannot sleep. It's not humanly possible for me to go home and just be like, oh, I'll pick this up on Monday. Doesn't work like that. So I'm very involved in the community, and I have been for years. I have community members that they are not foster parents, but if there is a dire situation, they take kids in. Sometimes those kids stay all 4 years of their high school once they find this home, because they are in a family that doesn't want to let them go and just wants to be a family to them. So I do whatever I can to find that kid whatever they need in that moment. And to talk about, so downstairs we do the food pantry, we have a full clothing closet, personal hygiene, anything that a student needs, I go and find, or we go and find donations for whatever. We have a kid that's doing the welding program. I need to come up with a size 15 pair of welding boots by next week so they can do welding. It just is whatever it is. I'm gonna do my best to get that kid served. So that's my goal in life, and I set it that high, and that's what I'm gonna do.
The U.S. Census reports that poverty in Lewiston is in the mid-20s, but I firmly believe poverty in this community is closer to 30%. So I say that because I think we have to remind our community of some of the ramifications of poverty and the true human effect that it takes on some of our students. So, Mr. Finn.
First of all, I want to thank you, Jamie, for presenting tonight. I also want to recognize Lizzie, who just stepped in, and Lizzie made the videos, and I believe that was your voice singing "You Are My Sunshine," right? Yeah, she's pretty amazing, so thank you very much. I want to let you know that we met this summer and then a few times since and gone down and hung out with you and your kids. It's important that you know that you are their Mrs. Star. I have Mrs. Star. They've got you. And you know what? When we go visit, bring yourself a box of tissues because you're going to read a binder of some of the entries that the kids have written about their stories, and it will move you. It's in there, yeah. This fight is not over. We are a community that rallies around those in need to make sure they get what they need most. I think that we've had a good conversation this morning about a direction that we'd like to go, and I need you to know that this committee here supports our kids and supports these efforts. It's just a matter of us telling the story, and I thank you for starting to do that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other committee members? To the public, any questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Lizzie. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 8 to discuss standardized testing in Lewiston Public Schools. And this is kind of an update from the superintendent, so he'll be presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So having spent a quarter now since July in Lewiston Public Schools, have had an opportunity to look at processes and procedures and perceptions, obviously a lot of data, and get a real good look at how we do business and why we do business that way. And something that obviously has been a hot button issue in our community has been how we approach standardized testing in Lewiston Public Schools. And sometimes in order to lead, you need to keep your mouth shut and just listen. And we've started to do that. I asked for a contingency of moms and dads and some parents to come and meet with me 2 weeks ago, and we're going to continue these meetings. From that meeting, in collaboration with Karen Piquette in our teaching and learning office, as well as Jenny Berrigan and Sue Williams, came up with some updates and maybe some points of emphasis, and certainly would like to start a discussion around how we need to rethink standardized testing in Lewiston Public Schools. And you'll see here in the slide it says building consensus, building trust, and building results. And without consensus and trust, we aren't going to see those results. But I believe we can. So if I can begin, I've got just a few slides I'd like to share. Here's what we do know now. By the way, I took this page from the 5th graders, believe it or not. They inspired me because as they talk about problem solving, they say, what information do you have? So here's the information that we have. We know every Student Succeeds Act, which is ESA, requires an annual assessment. And in Maine, that's the MEA. We give the SAT to students in high school. We know that ESA requires not less than 95% participation rate in each student group and of all students. We know our comprehensive needs assessment, which is, we call that our CNA, also requires data from a local assessment. The previous superintendent chose NWEA as the local assessment prior to departing. We know that NWEA serves as our district's universal screener. So that's information that we do know. What else do we know? We know that slide wasn't big enough for what we do know. We know that the Maine Department of Education has provided districts with a statement regarding the requirements, and their statement is this. ESA requires that all students be tested in math, English language arts, and science in the state's determined testing grades. For English language arts, that's 3 through 8 in high school. In science, that's 5 through 8 and high school. ESA does require that their state annually measure the achievement of not less than 95% of all students in each student group. Go ahead.
So when is math required? At the 3 to 8. And then the other question was, when you say each student group, does that mean each grade level? What schools?
So demographics.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thanks.
Great questions, Alicia. And you caught that math. So what about language related to the opt-out process? So we know that according to ESA 8528 A2B, relates only to Armed Forces recruiter access to students and student recruiter information. That can be found on page 427 of ESA. There are no further provisions for opt-out or non-participation within ESA. So what about school committee policy? We know that the school committee cannot and has not passed any policy that contradicts ESA. According to school committee policy ILA, the superintendent shall develop administrative procedures to implement this policy, which will identify the standardized evaluation instruments and the procedures to be used. So that is my job. But can Lewiston Public Schools choose to share a non-participation letter? It is the district's discretion, however. The district is compelled to meet the 95% participation rate. So yes, we can send a letter, and yes, we still have to meet 95%. Some districts require a meeting with the school principal before folks can opt out. Others require participation for promotion or even graduation. Lewiston Public Schools has in the past sent home opt-out letters to all parents for all assessments. So this has been the result of past practice, broken down by school, 2 of which no longer exist. But as you can see over the past 3 years, and most recently, we have a school that did meet 95%, and that's Longley. And then look at Martell, right up behind them. Nobody else has. Some not even close. Martell. Montello, I'm sorry. I don't have my distance glasses on right now. Thank you for that. So looking at that data, this should let us know that for these 3 years, our current strategy is not working. And that's okay. What we have to do now is come up with a way that we can make this work. So what is the risk we take by continuing our past practice? We know that we currently receive $2,755,888 in Title I funds. This allows us to operate with the resources we have without using local funds. The federal government can, and eventually will, hold Maine accountable. Therefore, DOE therefore does, can, and will eventually hold Lewiston Public Schools accountable. We do risk losing substantial funding if we do not take action. We have with us tonight a friend from DOE, Jeanette Kirk. Is Jeanette here? Hi, Jeanette. And I've asked Jeanette to be here to answer any questions around that. Well, what could really happen? What would really happen if we continue to not make that progress? Jeanette, would you be able to share that with us? Make sure you hit the button.
Good evening. So first things you need to know is Maine already has a condition, two conditions in fact, on its Title I award. So approximately we receive $75 million in federal funding on an annual basis. So with that comes strings, right? No money is free. Those federal strings are there. So one of those strings attached to that federal funding is participation rate. And we are required to test 95% of students. Everything Superintendent Finner said this afternoon is correct. So with those conditions on our Title I waiver, on our Title I award, comes some ramifications that may happen. So because there are already two conditions on our award, which I can go into if you have questions regarding those, that then puts an increased emphasis on the U.S. Department of Education to take further action. Because as far as they're concerned, we already have two conditions, so they will begin to ramp up the severity of those actions if those conditions are not removed. Does that make sense? So that's one piece. So once those conditions remain in place, they ramp up, then their approach to Maine for not meeting 95% participation and other areas, our admin funds at the state level are then impacted, and then it becomes a domino effect. So much in the same way as you use your funds, usually for teachers, to support your most at-risk students, we would then lose staff at the department which would support those teachers in those schools that would inhibit the approval of your applications and also the approval of your invoices. So then now you have a delay in receiving your funds, accessing your funds, and seeking reimbursement for those funds. Is there anything else you would like me to add, Superintendent Finn?
Get that. If you just stand by, because I'm sure some committee members may have some questions. So we know that local funds, if we were to miss out on funds, local funds would need to make up for what we lose, or programming would be cut. Either way, it's not a good situation for Lewiston Public Schools. So for our local assessment, how much did we pay this year for the NWEA in Lewiston Public Schools? And there's the invoice there for $46,016 for a local assessment. That is to be given 3 times during this school year. It's quite the investment in a local assessment. So just to recap what we know, because I need that, we are required to test 95% of all learners for state tests. We must give a local assessment as a universal screener for our CNA report each year. Lewiston Public Schools has spent over $46,000 for the NWEA this school year. Lewiston Public Schools is chronically coming up short in participation, as the data showed. And Lewiston Public Schools has not made progress with its current practice of sending home opt-out letters. That just has not worked for us right now. So how are we shifting that practice? We do know that a new letter went home this year. What I did not do is reissue the former superintendent's letter, because we have data that shows us that letter was ineffective. This was not a replica letter that has rendered the past results of less than 95%. We know that there were 3 reasonable assurances provided in the new superintendent letter, and those assurances were this: I'm asking folks to please allow your student to take the assessment, and I'll give you these 3 assurances. Number 1, we will make sure that the assessment is least invasive to the teaching and learning time. Second, your child's average report card transcript will not be impacted by the results of that test. And third, your child's teacher will not be evaluated by the results of any tests. In speaking with community members, those were their top 3 reasons why they were opting out of tests, because those practices, and then some others that came into play, were causing parents to be very concerned, and they should be. The local assessment was not included in that opt-out option this year. We need the local assessment data to fill out our comprehensive needs assessment, which then goes onto our application for Title I funding. We know that parents were provided with a letter regarding local assessment options. That letter did say, we're not going to make you take this test. We would love for you to take this test. It does help us identify our gifted and talented students. We need that data as well. It also helps us capture with what's called RIT data, where your learner is at a point in time over 3 times a year. This data is instantaneous. It is shared with parents immediately, so folks know this is where I am and there's my goal. Now, let me just be frank here. I am actually not a proponent of the NWEA. I would have likely gone with a different assessment if I were the superintendent when this decision was made. A much more inexpensive or much less expensive option called STAR, which is used by several of our surrounding districts, which also is shorter in time, about 20 to 25 minutes of testing, just 3 times a year, but also provides much cleaner data, would have been my suggestion to use. And as we talked with parents about that, some folks were saying, okay, well, we're interested, we're listening to this. I think that one of the problems here is that parents were not consulted with when it came to what the local assessment was going to be. Nobody asked them. And so that leads into this. State assessment was included in opt-out for this year. It was not included for opt-out this year because the community meetings were not yet held to discuss concerns. Community meetings taking place to listen, build trust, and reassess our current practices have taken place since then. So this is what these community meetings have produced. First of all, it's one of my favorite meetings that we've had all year long. We had a board member there. Renee was there. A forum for parents to express their concerns. What parents have told me is, we just wanted someone to listen. And so it took about 2.5 hours that evening, and we just listened. A place for parents to voice ideas, establish relationships, and build trust. And that takes time. A thought process around minimizing assessment to one state and one local. Right now, with transparency in mind, there's a document on our webpage that is 7 pages long, small type, of all the assessments that we give. The parents have a point here. That's a lot of testing. And maybe we're not quite using that data the way we need to. So we can change that. Resulting from our community meetings, a shift towards authentic portfolio assessment for students who choose not to participate. So what we don't want to do is incentivize testing by giving 100 to somebody for taking the test. That's not fair. We also don't want to disincentivize testing as well by having a kid just sit there and do nothing. An authentic assessment, and we can talk about this as a presentation down the road, would allow students to put together their actual work and put that into a portfolio, whether it be a physical portfolio, a digital portfolio, and write about why they're so proud of that work. Quite honestly, that's a lot more rigorous than actually sitting there and taking a multiple choice test. But our parents and students want to do that. Some of them just don't want to take the assessment. And so when we send home future letters, and discussing this with Mr. Gagnon, this is something we need to include. We need to give parents options rather than just opt in, opt out. Give parents options on, if you're not going to take this test, we respect that, but here's what we'd like to see you do, because you need to still know how your child's doing. And there's ways that teachers can tell our families how their kids are doing as well. And future meetings, because we have one next week that I'm very excited about, to examine other, less expensive, less intrusive local assessment possibilities. What we are going to do next week with our parents who volunteer their time to come in, and they're busy folks too, we're going to show them the NWEA so they can actually see it. Most parents never got to see it before. We're also going to show them STAR and what that looks like as well. And I'd like their feedback. I'd like their input. I'd like them to know, well, if my child's being asked to do this, and it takes 20, 25 minutes, so I can get this data, that's very clean data, to let me know how my kid's doing, and then how they're doing a few months later, I'm interested. If it takes an hour or 70 minutes to do that for the same exact data, well, maybe we can do better than that. And from a taxpayer's perspective, about half the price. So our friends in Auburn are using STAR. Our friends over in RSU 4 are using STAR. My wife uses STAR in her school, and I'm insanely jealous of the data because I'm a data person, and that data moves students forward. So we're going to show the assessments actually to the parents, and that might be a first time that's ever happened before. So that will happen next week. So this is the strategy that I'd like to use to reach that 95%. And you know what? Even if we don't reach 95%, I want the DOE to know that we're actually trying to get there. You know, when I coached college basketball, it wasn't just winning that I wanted. I wanted kids that wanted to win. And eventually they did. And I want Lewiston to want to reach this goal. And even if we don't, because we've got so many challenges here that may prevent us from that, we can show that we're trying. We're trying as hard as we possibly can. I would like to provide a genuine voice for parents in assessment practice design. That means for next year, for 2020, 2021, our parents had a say in how we get ourselves down to one state and one local assessment. They have a voice in that. Partner with parents to assist districts, this district, in reaching 95% on state assessments. We know that, well, as we heard from Jeanette tonight, we will be held accountable for that. If we can partner with parents on that by saying, look, if we put our best foot forward and we give the state and the federal government what we promised that we'd give them when we took title funds, on the local end, let's cut that down. Let's cut that down to least invasive, least intrusive, one assessment, one page that everyone knows about and folks can get behind. And you know what the thing is? We can do that. We could have always done that. There's nothing holding us back. We want to provide parents with relevant, timely data from local assessments and inform how we are using that to assist their child. At this point in time, until that document hit the website last week, parents didn't know. We're just testing our kid to test them. There may or may not be any value to this whatsoever. Who's getting this data? How are you using it? We don't know. In order for us to really do our jobs, we have to provide parents with what we're doing with that data so they can be a part of it as well. They're part of the journey. And finally, we want to work with the Department of Education. And thank you, Jeanette, for coming down tonight. We appreciate that. We want to work with the DOE to implement strategies to improve communication on the importance of participation. And the DOE's already done that for us. They've already put together presentations that we can give and things that we can send home to talk about why this is important and what parents can do to really help us. Because I firmly believe, having spent a quarter here already and combed through every ounce of data that there is to this point, and now thirsty for more, that doesn't tell our story. 65% participation, 80%, that doesn't tell our story. And the numbers that are a result of that doesn't tell our story. As a matter of fact, if you look at our acceptance rate to colleges, we're far above the average on that. Our kids get into schools and they do very well when they get there. It's a matter of getting the community behind a better way, a more balanced way to assess, so parents know that the data is being used to help move their children forward, that they're representing their district, and that we're earning the opportunity to teach and learn in this district the way that we said we were going to. Now, I will tell you now that you saw tonight a school receive an attendance banner. We're going to continue doing that for the rest of my months, years, however you want to keep me around here. And that's really important because it starts with that. That's data right there. And we made that data very important. Every principal filled out a 10-page principal's report for me. Part of that was, how is your attendance? And then we verified that. And so we know now that the school with the lowest rate had 90.1%. That's very, very good. So if we can do it there and get kids to come to school, maybe that next step is, what can we do when it comes to participation in data that is relevant to parents and kids? And that's where we don't have the answer tonight. And we may not have it for a few more months. But we're going to build next year's assessment philosophy and schedule with our parents and our kids and our teachers in mind, so that we can assess smarter, more balanced, and do a much better job for our community. So this is what I'm asking of this school committee, to please continue to support the work with parents and students to improve participation outcomes. Please come to those meetings if you'd like to. It's going to be up on the website anytime we have those meetings, and they're not going to stop next week. They're going to continue going and going, and we'll explore, we'll go deeper. We're going to talk about authentic assessment. We're going to show what that even looks like. I think more folks will be more excited about that than not, when your kids actually get to show off what they're doing and put their best foot forward. We'd like the school committee to recognize the lack of effectiveness of past practices and the sense of urgency around improving those results. And of course, adhere to policy and ESA so that we can work together and grow Lewiston Public Schools in the state of Maine. As the second largest school district in Maine, we have 562 students last year that did not test. In order to make our 95%, we could have had about 280 not test. It was 562. It goes above and beyond what our threshold was. We can do better, but this is not the fault of the parents, and I find that this is not the fault of the kids or the teachers. It starts in my office I took this job. I sit behind that desk. This is a superintendent issue right now, and I intend to work closely with this community to help remedy this problem. No guarantee that at the end of this school year we'll be at 95%. Probably not. But as we inch closer and closer to that, it's very important that the Department of Education knows that Lewiston is taking a new turn. And Lewiston is moving towards not only just having a participation rate, but doing very, very well when we do actually take these assessments.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Questions, comments from committee members? Ms. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions that came up during the presentation that I was curious about. When we talked about each student group at 95% or higher, are there any demographics that are underrepresented instead of just looking at it per school?
We could get that information for you specifically, and I could put that in your next packet if you'd like to, or even just email it out to you.
It would definitely be, at the very least, interesting.
Sure.
And then the second part was looking at policy ILA in our policy manual. The last time it was reviewed was September 2012. So we're clearly off our 3-year cycle by about 7 years. And so, but reading through, it does very much support everything that was talked about in terms of legal reference and Department of Education. So that's helpful to know. It seems like it would remain likely the same, but I think maybe adding something about working with educators, learners, and parents about this could add something to the policy. So that's a statement. And then my last question is, in assessing whether or not the NWEA is the better choice over STAR, or whichever way around, would that be an annual budgeting decision, or is there a contract?
Absolutely. So that was taken care of prior to my arrival. About 2 weeks prior to starting, I learned that NWA was the choice that was made. And so obviously we honor that choice. And so the dilemma of a new superintendent walking in is that I think I said today, it's almost like you're on National Treasure. You find different things out every single day. You're like Nicolas Cage, right? And so when I discovered that, we want to make sure that, okay, we said we're going to do this. We have to do this. Although in the back of my mind, I do know that there's, based on experience as an educator, there are better ways to get the very same data, but also to alleviate the concerns of our moms and dads that are just saying, guys, this is taking so much time and it's so intrusive upon our kids' school days, and we think we can do better. And the answer is absolutely. But I can tell you that as a superintendent, I don't have all the answers, but I have the ability to work with teams and with the community to let's assess this together rather than just make the call by myself. It's going to take some time, but we can do that.
The only other thing I would say is definitely including educators in the conversation. We hear from the collective bargaining unit that represents most of our educators about how testing is burdensome for them as well. And so just making sure their voices are included in the parent and community conversation as well.
Absolutely.
Ms. Parks?
I have multiple questions. How were parents informed or invited to these meetings originally?
So it's really interesting what social media can do. We can get a lot of information off that, can't we? And so I was sent emails from a specific group of parents who said that they'd like to come in and talk. They've been asking for years to come in. And so I said, absolutely. So we held community forums on Wednesdays here. And so that topic could really be anything from equity to testing. And the topic that day was testing. And the room filled up pretty quickly. And so really word of mouth from parents has spread. I anticipate us having to use this room next week. And so, you know, as we continue just community discussions, getting out there to communities, finding out where the folks are that we need to talk to, this is a topic that comes up no matter where I go.
I know I didn't receive a letter this year, so how are the letters being sent out at the school level?
So it's similar to what's happened in the past. The letters are sent from the district office to the schools, and the schools disseminate that as they need be. One thing that we do know is that sometimes letters don't quite make their way home, so it's important that those letters that come from this office also appear on the website too.
And I think the last question. I know that you gave data for the last 3 years, but the opt-out movement in Lewiston's been going on for at least 8 or 9 years. I know I've been opting my kids out for 9 years now, and there's a lot of families that have been for longer than that. I'm curious when the last time we met the 95% was at most schools in Lewiston. How long ago?
Right now, we don't have any data to substantiate that we ever have.
All set. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Mr. Jensen?
Just wanted to comment that I'm supportive of the plan. I like the STAR testing. It's definitely less stressful for students. Yeah, so I'm really happy to hear that. And I think the best phrase I heard from you was Superintendent Finn, give parents options, which is just fantastic. And yeah, so instead of just opting in or opting out or taking the test, now a authentic portfolio assessment I think is a great idea. So it covers all bases. It covers what we need to do as a district. It's a really good strategy going forward. So thank you.
Ms. Cornamash?
Thank you. Alicia, I just wanted to make comment to you that I did attend the meeting last week, and there were 3 or 4 educators that were participating in the meeting also. And I had one question. Are we still in our fall testing window, or is all testing complete at this point?
So right now, we're still technically in the window. Most of the schools have wrapped that up already. And so we'll enter, I believe in November will be the second time that we would collect RIT data for a local assessment. That, by the way, stays right here. It goes nowhere but here. It should be shared with parents and kids and teachers so they can shift their instruction. And then again in March. Oh, January and March. Go ahead, for NWA.
For NWEA, it's fall, winter, and spring. So it's September, January, and then again in May. And then the state assessment will be in March.
There's your answer to that. So it's also important that our parents knew what happens with that data. And the big question was, what happens with the NWEA data? So we actually put that onto our information on the website and spoke with parents about that this is something that your teacher gets instantaneously. It should go home. Your child is given a goal to hit next time, and if they meet their goal, that's fantastic. And it would be very similar to, in North Carolina, we gave something called benchmarks. Benchmarks were, we actually wrote the benchmarks in North Carolina as far as, I was on the committee that actually wrote these tests, and everyone gave the same history test for every single subject. And it would just kind of let us know where we were, but it helped us inform our instruction so that we could reach our goals as well. That's what the NWEA and the RIT data is supposed to do. Now, I'll say this, if teachers aren't sending this home, or we're not using this to do anything more than just fill forms out to get funding, then I'd be very turned off on it too. I will say that I've met with our data manager here across the hall who shared with me past practice has been that we're just trying to get this data so we can fill out our paperwork. And that's great, but that's the tip of the iceberg. This is very rich data that we should be using and training our folks how to use their RIT data so they can move their instruction forward as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Ms. Whitlow.
So I also am a parent of a child I've opted out the last few years, not only because of the frustration it causes kids with IEPs, and I think I just want to, I guess I want to say I support Superintendent Finn in this. I also want to say a couple meetings ago, we approved personnel agenda for hiring, and there was a lot of one-on-one hires that I was very impressed with, and I'm not sure I've seen a group of hires like that in one thing before, because it's there, we're hiring for those kids who really need it. And if we're giving those kids what they need, then the testing shouldn't be as difficult and stressful for them if they're actually learning in school. When your kid doesn't learn anything all year long, why test them? But if they're actually learning and we can start benchmarking that, that's pretty impressive. So I'm excited, and I hope that we can actually start seeing the data and even the kids with these IEPs as well. So.
Thank you, Ms. Whitlow. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Gagnon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for adding it to the agenda for this meeting. I know I had talked to Mr. Finn in regards to a situation at one of our schools, and we had a discussion about it. At the time, he wasn't prepared or ready or to bring this information to the board. I'm sure since then there's been a lot of new information and been enlightened by, and thank you for your presentation. Certainly enjoyed it. Also, I wanted to make known that your plan sounds very useful, and as a superintendent, that's exactly what I would expect, not just by our superintendent, but all superintendents in our entire state. However, it is known that I opt my students out as well, and more than recently, there was a concern because my own son, who was opted out, was told that he had to take the test no matter what. And there was an opt-out letter supposedly on file, but could not be, it was not brought to me when I was actually asked for it. So I don't know whether or not it was on file even. So I know there was a letter that went out, but whether it was filed correctly is another question. However, since then, and I expect concerns and mistakes to happen. That happens all over, happens with everybody. However, I also learned that a lot of students who did opt out did end up taking the NWEA, and so that was a concern. So I asked the chair to bring it to our attention, to bring it to this meeting, and so we are here today. At the same time, the government says our parents have the right to have a voice in their children's education, and opting out is something we can do. So it's like a contradiction, right? We can do the standardized testing, and at the same time, government says you can opt out your child. So, and previous to this current board, we had discussed with Mr. Webster to create that letter that you spoke of, and Mr. Webster, if I remember correctly, argued that, and even when we asked to put the NWEA test on there, he argued that. However, it was the voice of the board at that time to send out a letter, not to force parents to opt out. It wasn't that at all. It was just to let parents know they had the choice. And if they had the choice, they could send in a letter and do so to opt out. And to allow the teachers to teach. If a teacher said to that parent, I think the student should take that test, probably the parent would allow that student to take that test. So that was the situation at the time, and as a board we wanted to make sure that parents were educated in that form, because in the past they were told there was a lot of mistrust about testing, and there was a lot of testing, as you have discovered. And just want to let parents know that they did have a right and to do that. Some of us here have seen the results of that and have spoken with teachers, and some students, including my own kids, have significantly improved. So when you see those significant improvements, you have to wonder. You have to see that progress should continue. So, but at the same time, I support what you say, and that's your objective and your job to do. And I wouldn't expect anything otherwise. But yeah, there was certainly absolutely a mistrust in our community. And so when recently the dominoes started falling and we heard that the MWEA was a district test, and all of a sudden some things were not, some students who had opted out could not opt out. It's a standardized test, period. And when parents were told they couldn't, there was some mistrust formed there. And I'm not saying it's every school. That's up to you to figure out. I'm just letting you know what I'm hearing as a school committee member and as a parent. So just letting you know. And there's always room for improvement there. But at the same time, we just need that to be taken care of. Thanks for coming in, if you don't mind me saying, Ms. Kirk. But I remember several years ago, we talked about what the U.S. Department of Education can do. And at the time, the school board, quite honestly, didn't care. There was so much testing going on with no results that there were more like scare tactics to our parents. And if something came down from the U.S. Department of Education, bring it on. That's how that school board wanted to say, because we were seeing a detriment to our students by testing. And I think it was by having the test, that test could not be invasive is the way you mentioned it, but having the test could also be invasive in our minds, because you are removing the time for education. You're doing a test that has no effect on the student, only the district or the federal government allow the teachers to teach. That's less invasive. by allowing them to teach. And I liked what you said. You know, if they're not going to take the test, make sure they're doing something besides just sitting there or reading. Make sure that they're continuously learning, and that would be great. I know my son did take the test the first day, did great. As soon as I got the results from him, that he said I was really puzzled why I took the test, Dad, but I apparently did well. You know, the next day he was happy that he could read. He loves reading, by the way, just so you know. But he was happy to just do that as well. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I just wanted to thank you for your time. I know there's a lot of loose ends here and there. I was just surprised that after the amount of time that we put in at this school board, that all of a sudden we're hearing different things. Words that make testing sound softer, that basically it is still testing. And to tell parents that they could not opt out of a certain test when they could, it just seemed like that mistrust. And I don't want that to continue happening. I know you don't as well. But I just certainly want you to be aware of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Chair.
Gagnon. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Parks and then Mr. Shannon. Ms. Parks, go ahead.
Two more quick questions. The opt-out letters that went out this year, and I'm assuming are on the website now, are those in English only?
Of course not. They have been translated.
And as you said before, it doesn't appear that we've ever met 95% for all of Lewiston or the majority of Lewiston. Have we ever been penalized at all?
It's hard for me to say that right now. However, I can tell you that we don't want to play chicken with DOE. I would argue respectfully with our board member, Mr. Gagnon, that I do care, and I care deeply about our programming and about our kids. And if I'm being told as a superintendent that your job is to make sure you enforce policy and policy supports the law, then I have to care about that. I can't be, as a superintendent, I can't be someone to say, they'll never do it. We have to be able to build in contingency plans in the event that they do. So just because my house has not been hit by a tornado does not mean I don't have to plan for that. So what we're saying is let's put measures into place that would allow us to move that needle in the right direction, to be less invasive, to actually show that there is a lot of educational value behind knowing where your student is in the plan to shift instruction to get them where they want to go. If that's more valuable than pretty much anything in education, having a specific plan for your child. And so if we're communicating that is what we're doing and involving educators and parents in these decisions, then I believe that we are doing our job. And at least we can put in writing with fidelity and honesty when we have to come back with our corrective action for DOE each and every year, that we're doing more than just sending a letter home. We're actually doing a lot more than that. And in time, we'll earn that trust. And folks don't know me from Adam here at all, so hopefully my track record over time will allow folks to see that we have a superintendent that doesn't want to test anywhere near as often, but with the data that we do get, with the team that we have in place, we can move our district forward.
All set, Ms. Parks. Thanks for your patience, Mr. Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would be safe to say that not every member of that school board voted in favor of letters being sent home to parents telling them they had the right to opt out. It would also be fair to say that not every member of that school board felt that we should thumb our noses at the federal government. There were, however, a majority of members who did. One thing we must, as a board, keep in mind: if we cannot evaluate how well the methods we're using to teach our students are working, how do we hold ourselves accountable for improving those methods? How? Everybody wants to talk about transparency and accountability. I just think if you can't evaluate the quality of your instruction, then you don't have a method for saying, we got to get rid of this damn English language learners piece we're using and replace it with something else that kids can get. And We've had 500 and how many students? 562, and that's about 10% of the total population of the school district in number of students. I just don't know what to tell you. If you want to hold a certain group of elected officials accountable for how well our schools are doing, as you should, because that's our job, and yet you won't allow us to have the information we need to make informed decisions about what we should do, then I think your kids should be homeschooled. Really, because the school department obviously doesn't have anything to offer you. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Any other comments or questions from committee members? Ms. Ray.
Just one quick question. In assessing the NWEA versus STAR, are there different testing requirements instead of 3 times a year or that?
So STAR provides a window that you can test within, and so we would look to have the 3 times a year. It's a lot more specific in the reports that go home to parents. I'd be happy to share with you what the data looks like from the exact same test from the NWEA and STAR. I'm insanely jealous of those that are using STAR. I've used STAR myself in the past, and I think that you know that as a principal, I have moved every single school forward double digits. And when we use STAR, that was a great tool for our teachers and for our parents to get involved in. All I'm asking for in this district is the opportunity to talk with parents, meet with parents, and reveal to parents what the options really are. Because testing does not have to be done to students. It can be done with students and parents in mind as well. And yes, it takes more time. And no, you can't just pull it out of your back pocket and say that this is the answer, because there are no answers that you can come to without having a discussion around a table. And so I also want to make sure that folks know that there is no law saying that folks can opt out. It does not say that. It does not say that. What it does say is that the district can elect to send a letter home. That's what it does say. There is no policy saying that the superintendent has to send a letter home. That does not exist. And so I'm charged to uphold that 613-page document that everyone got, that I have too. And in that, I'm just doing my job. Part of that job, however, is also to make sure that we are constantly communicating with parents so we can improve our practice. And I believe that with the plan that we have in place and this discussion that we have, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Mr. Gagnon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to point out that Mr. Finn and I will have this back and forth, which may seem like we're disagreeing with each other, which I don't want that to be seen that way. I don't think we are at all. It's just that there's a fundamental right for a parent to opt out their kid, and that's what we're just trying to allow to happen. It almost sounds like what we're hearing is kids should not do it, should not opt out. And we're hearing that from, how we want those scores of the 95% to happen. What I'd like to possibly consider in the future is to talk with maybe our legislative liaison to possibly bring this to a different level to create a policy, possibly. Maybe a discussion on it. That's all, because I can see this being a question with the rest of the school districts in our entire state. So just leaving it out there. For that matter, we can talk to our legislative liaison. We could talk to you as a chair and see where we can take that in the future. That's all I'm saying.
Very good. Thank you. Any one from the public or staff who'd like to weigh in on this briefly? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 9 to review and discuss the Maine School Board Association legislative resolutions. And in just a second, Monique Roy will present. Ms. Kirk, I just wanted to thank you again from the school committee for taking time to visit us and to share your thoughts. Thank you. Sorry about that, Monique. Ms. Roy.
So I was going to sort of run down these, but we are off schedule, so I'm just going to only 6 minutes. So basically, the resolutions this year are, I don't know, I don't feel they're as controversial as last year, but those of you who have reviewed them may disagree. One of the biggest things is use of social media. There's been a lot of issues with the way that staff use social media and then school boards use of social media. So those two, I'll just briefly say the Maine School Board Association supports development of local board policy and guidelines around the appropriate use of social media by employees during the workday and outside of work. And so I don't know when we've last looked at this policy. I don't think it's up to date as far as all of the technology that we actually have access to and ways that people are communicating. And it's just better to have a policy that can give expectations to everybody. Then the school board use of social media, same thing. So I don't know if we actually have a school board. Well, we do. It's based on emails and stuff. It's not really that broad and talk about, you know, what we should or shouldn't be posting. And the biggest thing I would say that the standards include making clear you are speaking as an individual and not on behalf of the school board, directing concern or complaints about the district to the administration, and conducting yourself online in a manner that reflects well on the district. So that's like a big chunk of the middle of that. But, you know, I think some people step outside and think, or they don't explicitly say this is me speaking, not the school committee, or make broad statements. And then legislative focus on students is another one. Mr. Shannon kind of referred to it earlier. The amount of bills or proposed bills that came out last year was insanity. It was even hard for any committee to keep up with. And so being on the legislative committee, we met every Tuesday. You've heard this mantra before, where we've sometimes looked at 40 different things. And they're all over the map. And they are impacting and putting mandates on schools when that's really shouldn't be the focus. It should be anything that's legislative should be focused on the student center and getting feedback from educators and students. So we just want to make sure that that message is loud and clear. Board teacher relations, there was a lot of bills this year that had to do with the association, and we want to make sure that we keep our communication strong with our partners in this educational adventure that we're on. And then the last thing is the CTE funding restoration. This resolution calls for the state to restore career and technical education funding to fiscal year 2019 levels for all CTE regions. We know how important this kind of education is. We need more. Questions?
So I got to tell you, I was pretty impressed with these, the direction that it went this year. So I'm very supportive of this. Mr. Shannon.
Thank you. I too was very happy with the resolutions. I think that as a board we should support them all. I think that the Maine School Management Association may want to work a little bit around how they're going to get this student input. Okay? They have a lot of areas open to them where they can get input from school boards, where they can get input from surveys and all those types of things. But sometimes the good sources for how kids think something should go are the kids themselves, because we really don't know what's going on in their brains. They do. And they certainly have the ability to speak and give that information to those who would be lobbying about bills. And I think it's an important thing that they're starting to recognize that the student input is going to be important. And maybe even the staff input piece, because it like you said, they spent a year just chasing their tails because there was so much stuff up there. So I certainly favor a positive vote for each of these resolutions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray.
In terms of the use of social media, it appears that our policies only cover school board use of social media under our school committee member code of ethics, which is a policy, interestingly. I don't know that I agree with that, if you can't tell by my voice. The last update was August 2016, so again, out of date, especially since we all came on in 2018. In addition to that, I think the legislative focus on students is a really important reminder to legislators. It's a young body at this point, and so having them refocus themselves on the students would be really beneficial to us. Always great to encourage better board-teacher relationships. And then the CTE funding. Do you know which regions suffered funding cuts?
There was a lot of confusion about this. We had representatives come and speak to the Maine School Board Association, and there was argument between the two legislative people that were there on what the cuts were, who had them, and what the impact was. Some said that there wasn't, then somebody said it was more. So there's still a lot of confusion about it. We just want, that's why the dates of the fiscal year 2019 levels is there specifically, because take a step back, make it like it was. So I don't know, I don't have that in front of me, but I can ask.
Yeah, it's just curious to think if we were the only ones impacted.
Jake, do you have info on that, or we can ask Rob?
Communities were impacted negatively, and a number of communities, regions were that are more spread out, got more allocation. And the argument there was around transportation and needs to move children from wider rural areas to the centers. But it definitely impacted us locally.
Thank you.
All set, Ms. Ray? Okay, Mr. Gagnon?
I had to remind myself what it was that he needed. So thank you, Mr. Ray, for bringing that up with the code of ethics that we have. So it was, and it's not just us, it's throughout. We understand, I think they just re-added it into a mix of how to use social media, whether it was school board, teacher, and those things. So I'm glad that this is being clarified. I'm kind of curious. I know are you going to the conference soon, and at some others as well, at how other districts work with someone, whether it's teacher or school board member in particular, was what I'm thinking is when you have somebody who goes AWOL. Right now, there's basically no ramifications of that. They just, oh, those are just rules, but I don't need to follow them. And so I'd be curious when you come back, what do other districts do? I mean, you just slap them on the wrist and say, that's it. But I'd be curious to hear, what other districts might say or do in regards to that. So thank you. Oh, you had something.
So this is a discussion that comes up at our meetings at the state level, and there are some folks that have gone rogue, is the way that we say it. And it is difficult when there isn't a policy in place that specifically addresses the way that it needs to, and then any ramifications. There have been school board members in this state that have been recalled because of their behavior, but it was a combination of things. It wasn't just social media. So, I mean, there are folks that are extreme and they don't abide by that idea that we are a board and not just an individual, and they create their own pages. They do a whole bunch of different things. So it would take a lot to do something about it, especially if you don't have a firm policy about it, but elected officials, that's something to consider.
Ms. Ray?
So the city charter does not have a recall provision for Lewiston, and so the charter would need to change if that were to be a consequence. Right, but so that's not a possibility here, even if someone were to embark on such an endeavor in the social media space. It would have to be a charter revision for that to be added in, but there might be other options for public conduct discussion in a policy, I would say.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Jensen?
Mr. Chair, I'm supportive of each item here. Also, any chance you get to make a plug about the state funding formula and how it's unfair for service center districts as well as growing student districts, aka Lewiston, I'd really appreciate bringing that up. Thanks.
All right, so I think, Mr. Shannon, we're going to be brief, though, so we can move on to the next agenda item.
Just as brief as possible, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted everybody to be aware that What he said is important, but nobody thinks the funding formula is fair. Whether you live in a service center community or whether you live in a rustic county where they have to drive the bus 800 miles to get the kids to class for that CTE class. So sometimes you need to be careful what you ask for because you're going to get it.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. So overall, I think if I'm paraphrasing what I've heard, the school committee in general supports all the resolutions for Monique's kind of marching orders. Okay, very good. We'll move on to agenda item number 10. Bobby is going to be very brief in presenting. Let me see. Hold on, I lost. To receive and approve budget reclassification. Thank you, Bobby.
Hello. So this is an annual request that we make. I'm seeking authorization to allow me, upon the finalization of our audit, to be able to move budget numbers around depending on what articles might go over budget. It's something that we do every single year.
Can you share how we remain transparent, when that happens?
Yes, so what we do is, I think it's the November 4th school committee meeting. We will be presenting the audit and we'll tell you all about it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Mr. Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve budget reclassification for FY 2019.
Moved by Mr. Jensen, seconded by Ms. Whitlow. Any questions or comments? Mr. Shannon?
I'll vote in favor of this motion because it's controlled by law how much can be moved, which percentages can be moved. So it's actually a kind of a juggling act that has to be performed by those folks who are handling budget. So she can move X amount of funds from this and this and this and pay for that. And they do a good job doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Bobby.
You've done my job before. Clearly.
Thank you. And any other questions or comments from the committee? And to the public? Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, agenda item number 11, report from the City Council representative, Ms. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The City Council met last week on October 1st in a workshop and a meeting. Our workshop items were focused on the proposed smoking ban on Lisbon Street between Adams Avenue and Main Street. 11 folks showed up in support of that, and so it moves to our next agenda next week for first reading. We also gave further instruction to the Department of Planning and Code on marijuana establishments as they continue to build the plane while flying it. The meeting, some highlights. We adopted the rental registration ordinance, which will help us with our housing stock and keeping track of buildings that are falling into disrepair and that need some help. And then we also, similarly to the school committee, approved a retire rehire program that will help us keep some of our most valuable workers in the city. I also wanted to thank Mr. Cifelli and Mr. Ford for hosting me today at the high school to speak with the government class. I'll be back tomorrow for another section of the class answering their questions, and I actually have some for Superintendent Finn after the meeting based on some policy ideas from the students, so educational for all of us.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Ray. Agenda item number 12 is the report from the committee chair. So, you know, we're well into the school year, so I just want to take an opportunity in my chair to thank all of our principals and all of our educators. I've had many discussions with Superintendent Finn, and it just feels like this year has a positive note to it, and that's because of the leadership in our schools and the willingness of our teachers and staff as a whole to really get on board and try to move some exciting change that's coming to our district. Also, student representatives' invitation to the state conference. Do you know if that's been done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I took care of
Okay. And I thank Mr. Shannon for bringing that up to me on 2 occasions because I think I forgot the first one, but I think that's really important that we include them in participation at the conference. And we have 2 good ones, right? We always seem to have really good student representatives on this committee from what I've seen in the past and personally seen recently. All right, agenda item number, any questions of me from committee members? Okay, agenda item 13, report from the superintendent.
First of all, thank you, Chairman Kerr. I'd like to just recognize 2 folks that have helped the first-year superintendent immensely, even just get to this point. Bobby Avery and Karen Paquette, right hand, left hand. They run their teams with such precision that it allows me to do what it is that I do in this job. So I don't get enough opportunity to thank them publicly. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate you. I do. So just in the next 2 weeks of October until we meet again, all kinds of great things are going on. We have the Western Maine Superintendents Association Legislative Breakfast on Wednesday. That'll be at the Green Ladle. October also brings the statewide CTE conference to Lewiston. 425 educators will descend upon the Green Ladle as well. We have Farwell's Pumpkin Festival, and I will be in the donkey booth first yet again. Hopefully, Mr. Langos will follow me again.
Supposed to be really warm.
I'm going to do it for the kids. Okay. We have an equity vision team that we are forming in collaboration with Deb, Ryan, and James Ford, who is here tonight. We sent out invitation to the entire district to ask folks to sign up if you want to be on this equity vision team, because we believe that we need an equity vision statement for our school system, just like the city is developing one as well. And that equity vision statement should be reflective of everything that we do, and everything we should do should be reflective of that. We had a number of folks agree to come and serve on that team. James, Ryan, and Deb and myself will be meeting later on this week to pare that down to 15 folks that really would like to contribute. And at the end of the month, we'll start our work, our year-long process around creating an equity vision statement.
Right. So you realize that's already in works with Macon's committee, that the school committee is cooperating with the city of Lewiston.
Right, exactly. This is our teachers and other folks as well that we've invited in to create an equity vision statement for our school system.
Just so I can clarify, so currently Bobby, Megan is working with the mayor and city administration to create a citywide equity statement that covers the school. So we're trying to do it all in one. So just I'd reach out to Megan and she can fill you in more on that. But we appreciate all the work that might come on our.
Sure, sure. This is just an attempt for us to be able to move that conversation forward in our school district as well. So we have that going on. We also have our interviews that will continue for the continuous school improvement coordinator that we have been seeking and received several applications and have not quite found that right fit yet. Well, that will continue this week. We have 3 more interviews. Member Ray is on that panel as well, so we look forward to Wednesday afternoon as the search continues for the right fit. And also, we have a student advisory council being formed at the high school and at the middle school, and that will give me an opportunity to meet with small groups of our high school, middle school students at first, and just to hear their voices as well. So that will continue, and that's all in the next couple weeks here.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Agenda item number 14, school committee community announcements. Ms. Whitlaw.
This weekend at the middle school, we had a football game, 7th and 8th graders against Auburn. It was kind of like a mini Battle of the Bridges type of thing. But it was very exciting because there was a lot of communication going on, and we breast cancer awareness, fundraising, and a lot of money was raised and donated to the Dempsey Center, so that was pretty exciting. And the scoreboard was working, so it was good. Communication's going on with how to improve some things over there in the field, and it's good.
Thank you, Ms. Whitlow. Ms. Ray?
Just one final reminder that the Lewiston Education Fund is hosting its 10th annual Harvest Dinner on October 16th, so a week from Wednesday at Fishbones. It's a great opportunity to help us at our largest, or their largest, I'm no longer on that board, their largest fundraiser of the year, and they work to provide extracurricular grants to the school system. So they're a good partner if you're able to make it.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Any other announcements from committee members? Any announcements from folks in the public that they might be aware of that we're not? Thank you. And agenda item number 15, future agenda item suggestions from committee members. Ms. Roy.
Can we review the social media policies? The policies that we talked about tonight, can we specifically work on those?
Okay. Duly noted. And just, I want to add, so we're behind on policies this year. I mean, I think, but right, but just remember we had a lot of change in leadership, and we had like how many contracts to negotiate? 5, which ate up half the committee, and then ate up the staff who was actually supposed to be doing, or I think was supposed to be doing policy. So it was very challenging. Ms. Avery, do you have something to add?
So just so that the committee knows, all of our policies are sitting with Maine School Management right now. They are doing a review of every single one of them. They'll come back and they'll let us know what we are deficient in, and then we can have a dialogue about how we're going to correct that. And that review will also include recommendations for all of the new ones that just came out.
So we're working on it. Yes, Ms. Ray.
To clarify on that, that's are they reviewing so that we come up to speed with DOE and state guidelines, or are they reviewing? We would still need to do additional review for Lewiston to be the best at this, right?
I completely agree with that. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Ms. Parks.
On the subject of policies being reviewed, I know it was brought up with the previous leadership, but the school bus and transportation policy, specifically around notification responsibilities, if there's some kind of an issue with transportation. I know that there were a couple of people in the community who had reached out prior to the switch in leadership that wanted that reviewed. And I don't think it exists, so at some point maybe a future agenda item to work on developing training standards and oversight for our school resource officers.
So did you see the article that was recently in the paper? Okay, good. So 3 policies there. What was the school bus one again, the wording on that?
It's pages 143 to 156.
Okay.
That's all I know.
And then Monique's suggestion, and then you also suggested school resource officer. Is that more of a, because that we'll have to create a policy on that, right? Okay. All right. Ms. Ray?
And also, that person is an employee of the Lewiston Police Department, and so we would have to consider that bargaining unit's work environment clauses in their contract, I'm guessing.
Yeah, good point. So I guess some research might have to go into that one, because we can set policy of what our expectations are, but you're right, they have a bargaining contract.
Either half-time, or I don't.
Yeah.
Just quickly, and I'm sure LPD can verify, but I believe all our SROs in Lewiston are currently SRO certified.
Good information. Could you share information with the committee on what that exactly means? Okay, thank you. Yep.
And so just as a heads up, our Spotlight series continues. In our next meeting, our SROs will actually be here to speak to you, as well as a student group that right now we're battling between 2. So they want to come, but the SROs will be here.
So if possible, Jake, with the superintendent's permission, if we could get that before that meeting. Okay, thank you. Any other agenda suggestions from committee members? If none, oops, Mr. Jensen. No, I'm paying attention. I looked that way, saw nothing, and looped.
Slow to the punch. Just in line with the topic of policies, because I guess we all kind of had that on the mind tonight. This is probably something for the next board to consider, but maybe even like a dedicated policy review committee, something that includes other stakeholders in the community. At the end of the day, the policy decisions do come down to the board, as they should, and we always will have the final say, but to have some prep work done beforehand to get more input involved, I think is something that would be a good change for the district. So
Great idea. Mr. Shannon.
Hopefully, we'll include our attorney with that group so that we're not putting in policies that violate state or federal law because a group of concerned citizens thinks it's a good idea. And I'm not telling you they're not concerned citizens, because they are, or they wouldn't be doing the input. But we do need to have some oversight over what we can and cannot institute as a policy.
Yeah, I think, though, staff would be present, so staff who's prepared. Ms. Avery?
Mr. Shannon, I agree with you again this evening. But yes, staff, I know, staff would be there to make recommendations, but it's always good to make sure that our policies abide with the law.
It does, but we would need an estimate from an attorney on how much he would charge to review how many books of policies, so. Right, and that's where I think that would be a committee decision on if that's part of a budget, because that would require a budget line item, and I believe it would be that expensive. Anyway.
So
Bobby will look into it.
that's true as well, and that's Maine School Management is actually looking at our policies right now for the tune of $750.
Wow.
Which is a steal. It's a bargain.
That's true. We don't utilize that service enough, I think, because you're right, we pay for that, and that probably would be a perfect review for legal status at a much less cost. All right, any other questions or comments? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Ms. Roy, seconded by Mr. Gagnon. All in favor? Thank you. You can't stand up to walk away until we adjourn.